As a preliminary matter, this is Erica Coles-Jacobson, Chair of the Newbury Finance Committee. Permit me to confirm that all members and persons anticipated on the agenda are present and can hear me. Finance Committee members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Take yourself off mute, please. Joe Ali, do not expect him to respond. Gene Case.
Here.
Tom Howard. Tom Howard, please respond in the affirmative.
Here.
Marshall Jesperson.
Here.
Susan Noyes.
Here.
Frank Visconti.
Here.
Tracy Blaze.
Here.
Got it.
Bob Connors from the Municipal Building Committee.
Here.
And any members of the select board that have joined us that would like to be able to speak either in behalf of the select board or as their role on other committees.
Am I supposed to say here?
So yes, identify yourself.
Yeah, Dana Packer, I'm here.
Excellent. Great. Bob, are there any other members of your committee that I should recognize or that we should make sure that we know they're here?
Yeah, no, I don't expect anyone else from the committee to be here.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. Today, this April 7th open meeting of the Newbury Finance Committee meeting is being conducted remotely in accordance with Chapter 107 of the Acts of 2022, which extends the governor's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Ledger 30A, Section 20 until March 31st, 2025. This public meeting is being conducted remotely. It will be recorded and will be broadcast live through local access cable channel 9 on Zoom and at www.tnctv.org, and a recording will be found on the Newbury Access YouTube channel. This order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location and allows for public bodies to meet entirely remotely so long as reasonable public access is afforded so the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. For this meeting, the Newbury Finance Committee is convening by video conference via Zoom, is posted on the Finance Committee's agenda, which can be found on the town's website and which identifies how the public may join. Sorry, challenges of the different screens and scrolling here. Let's see here. The meeting ID for this meeting is 869-0619-5621, passcode 084115. Meeting you can join by calling 1-929-205-6099 in the US and entering the meeting ID when prompted and the passcode when prompted. Please note this meeting is being recorded and attendees participating by video and or telephone conference. This recording will be available in the Newbury Access YouTube channel. Meeting materials were provided to board members prior to the meeting for review. Meeting ground rules. Before we turn to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to assure accurate meeting minutes. I, as chair, will introduce each topic and speaker on the agenda. After speakers conclude their remarks, I will ask all committee members to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please use the raise hand function and please hold until your name is called. Further, all attendees, except Finance Committee members and staff and those recognized at the beginning, please remember to mute your computer with the mute button or use your phone *6 to toggle mute unmute when you're not speaking. Please use earbuds and earphones with tablets and cell phones. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. For any responses, please wait until I yield the floor to you. State your name before speaking. When finance committees wish to engage in discussion with other members, please do so through me, taking care to identify yourself when you wish to speak. Each vote taken in the meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. I will seek questions and comments through raise hand functions of those recognized to speak today. At this point in time, our agenda for today's call does not include any public comment, to be clear. So we have had our confirmed member access, we have had our roll call to establish quorum, and we've read the introduction to remote meeting. So I would like to open up our first agenda item, which is a review and discussion of the annual town meeting warrant. And this is specifically to continue discussion of the warrant article number 18 around town hall. Thank you all for bearing with that part of the meeting. To that end, I would like to lead off on and open it up to committee members who the purpose of this committee meeting was to get further information from the members and chair of the Municipal Building Committee around Article 18, which is the town hall project. So, Frank, do you want to lead in here, or do you want to have the committee present to us? How would you like to kick off this discussion?
Sure, that's fine. Thank you. So during our last meeting, I had three concerns, and those concerns, let me sort of establish not only what they are, but where they come from, right? They come from general conversation with other people around town, part of which I think is to some extent misinformation that's circulating, but gaining traction, and it comes not in any way from a sort of a disagreement or misunderstanding of the plan as it stands. It comes from wanting to make sure that the presentation on behalf of the town, on behalf of the building committee, on behalf of select board is bulletproof. It is prepared. And the three layers of concern there were two of which I'll say I think are pretty well addressed. But the three layers of concern there are, number one, we didn't have any actual numbers to point to say this is what that document that Erica circulated, which I believe Bob was the source, which was entitled 4/6/2023 Cost Implications, the PDF that went around yesterday at 7:14 a.m. I believe that if you all are comfortable with that for public consumption, addresses an educated, cost-effective means of addressing the refurb costs issue. My concern about that was based upon, I heard from more than a few people, well, a study was done and it'd be only a couple of bucks, a couple of $1 million to get this thing up and running to code, and we could have our town hall back. That needs to be addressed with data to the counterpoint, and I think Bob's document does that. And whether or not you're happy with that for public consumption that's up to you. The second thing was to affirm, which we did not have in the prior meeting, to affirm that the structure on Kent Way that the town is in today is not for sale, period, the end. To my understanding, we have email documentation from the owner saying absolutely not. Great.
Correct.
That's addressed. The third, which I honestly don't know can be addressed adequately prior to town meeting, or maybe it can through showing use case data, is the size of the overall building. in light of the fact that by our most recent estimates, we are at a really, really high cost per square foot. Every square foot counts to the taxpayer. And if we have the data to show that, yes, we absolutely do need this amount of square footage, then I'd say you're prepared for the meeting. I don't know what the answer to that is. Bob, you're going to know. I'm sure you do. So those were the three areas of concern that I did not feel previously. I felt that this presentation would get backlash, to put it mildly, in town meeting. And again, I think two of them are resolved. I think the business case for the size of the building probably needs some tangible visual data around it to show why it needs to be this large, in light of the fact we're only net plus 4 employees since 2016 vacate date. But I suspect you guys have that. So I'm interested to hear more about that. And again, I think a lot of it comes down to data visualization, to be able to show, yes, this is it. This is why it needs to look this way. And that's all. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you,
Okay.
Frank.
And
Excellent
Eric,
question.
Madam Chairman, if I could just add one thing to that third bullet item is,
You're muted.
Your mute went on, Susan.
if the municipal building committee could be prepared with this justification for their public meetings versus waiting for just town meeting, I think that would be my preference. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I think we need to leverage those sessions and be as forthcoming as possible in those meetings and not wait for town meeting.
Agreed.
Agreed.
Eric, I'm looking, I don't see an email from you yesterday morning with the information from Bob.
Tom, I'm going to, if the chair allows, I'll share my screen, which will have all that information. We can walk through it directly. If you don't have it, it's up to you.
That's fine,
Yes.
I just would like to have had it.
Yes, we, it actually got sent around at last evening. Between last evening and this morning, there were different versions. So I want to send through a couple of things too, but I want to, just to keep us on point of order, of Frank raised three concerns, just to, because his audio cut out, but I think I've got it right, is that his first one was a cost estimate of renovation, for three concerns. First one being renovation costs versus building new. The second one was affirming that the location on Kent Way is not for sale. And number three is adequate information about the size of building. And then Susan added on that she wanted to also have this information not only be here, but also at the public information sessions ahead of town meeting. I know Tracy affirmed for us that we do have an email from the current owner. So I'm going to test issue number 2 to just take it off the table for further discussion today, is that we do know that the building at Kent Way is not for sale. So that's not an option. And we do have email verification on that. So to address the second two questions, or number 1 and 3, I will open it up to Bob Connors from the Municipal Building Committee to share his presentation, which includes some cost estimates and background on the size. So I think those two things are very, very important. And I think it would be great for everyone on the committee here to feel comfortable with how those numbers were reached for square footage and then for cost estimates. Bob, I yield to you.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen, hopefully. Let's see here. All right, can everybody see that? Can everybody see the presentation?
No,
Still waiting to load.
Okay.
Bob, is it the PowerPoint? Because
Yes,
I,
it is.
up there it
Oh,
goes.
yeah. Okay,
There
you
you
have
go.
it there. Okay,
Yours is sharing now.
okay, great. All right, well, good morning, everybody. I received a call beginning of well, I guess after your meeting on Tuesday night, requesting some additional information, as I think Frank and Susan has mentioned. And what I've done is I've gone back through all of our existing records and documents, and I put together a little packet today to see if I can walk through and answer your questions. And part of this goes back so long. We've been talking about this thing for a better part of a dozen years. It's easy to forget how we got to certain points, certain sizes in certain locations. So with your permission, I'm going to take your 3 topics out of order simply because I've set up the deck on this a little bit differently. So I'm going to go to slide tab 1. So tab 1, this goes back to the old programming standards used by municipalities prior to the formation of the current municipal building committee. And these were plans that were done back in March of 2022. And if you look in the lower right-hand corner, you'll see that the main level had 7,000 square feet. As I moved to the upper level, it had 7,000 square feet. That the old programming standards typically used by municipalities was projecting a building of 14,000 square feet and not addressing storage, although it didn't get any further than that. Could have incorporated the 3rd floor attic area for storage, but that would have been in the probably 5,000 or 6,000 square feet. So what I'm going to do is move through. So here we are at 14,000 square feet on tab 1. Tab 2 is the town engaged the services of Context, and it was the preliminary discussion of reformatting the municipal building committee, and there were discussions with the town, with Alicia and with Jeff Shaw, that at a minimum, we would committee, and for the committee to get involved, we were going to introduce an innovative approach to programming needs. Office size reduced to 120 square feet, swing space, admin space reduced to 64 square feet, and with a target of making this all work within a 10,000 square foot gross area. So we've gone from 7,000 square feet to 5,000 square feet on these on programming needs. Now, this is before schematic design. So it's just kind of the evolution of where we're at, how we got here. And it just gives you how we've, the progression of what would typically be used by a municipality prior to an innovative approach that the committee has introduced. Tab 3 is the town hall program comparison that was done again in June of 2022. What this did was this compared existing space at Kent Way versus proposed space on levels 1, 2, and in the attic based on this. Now, the confusion that happens in a construction project is I have 120 square feet. I've got 10 offices. That's only 1,200 square feet. We always have to convert net square footage to gross square footage. So a 5,000 square foot building to build, if you need 5,000 square feet, I use it this way. If we need 7,000 square feet of net office space, we're going to build approximately a 10,000 square foot building to house the necessary stairwells, elevator, hallways, and other storage areas. And then you have the footprint of your walls, outside walls, inside walls, interior walls, and the like. So this is a direct comparison that exists. And I thought it may be helpful whether you have a chance to process this right now or look at it, I just thought this might be helpful information. Why don't I just stop there for a moment to see if you have any questions on these first few slides in the deck.
Thank you, Bob. I was going to suggest exactly the same thing. What questions do members of the Finance Committee have around the space assumptions?
Well, let me start, Marshall, here. And we've gotten it down to 5,000 square feet per floor plus 2,000 in the attic. So who decides that this is the right space? I know that you've taken it down from 14,000 square feet nominally in the first two floors, not including the attic in the original design. And I guess the question is going to come up, is this the best you can do?
No, I think if I could answer that question, I think it's a very good question, Marshall. What we have to remember is we were doing a comparison to what we're currently using at Kent Way, which is adequate, but it's not completely functional. I'll give you an example. Last Tuesday night, you had your Finance Committee meeting, and I was in a Conservation Committee meeting on the same night. Tuesday nights, trying to get space to meet in public versus on a Zoom call. You have one room at Town Hall to do that, or at the town offices. Now, other remote locations do not have the video equipment set up and easily convenient to record our other meetings. So we took what currently was being used, but we adapted our programming size requirements, but we wanted to focus on the meeting rooms that were needed. We certainly need a big public meeting room for select board type public hearings. Or if we had a hot topic at a zoning or planning or finance or conservation, you could use 600, 700, 800 square foot meeting room. The alternative was having two large conference rooms, which would house most committee meetings that were not going to have a big public presence because of some public hearing. So by introducing the correct office size, creating swing space for non-full-time in the office employees and admins, we are able to reduce this down to a lean and mean 10,000 square feet, but incorporating two additional large conference rooms where committee and boards could meet, and one smaller conference room where that staff and administrative members could meet, simply because offices no longer have a round table and 2 or 4 seats in it where a meeting could be held in someone's office. We've reduced that, and it's really the standard that is used at the institutional and at the commercial level, and certainly even at state and federal government levels. Your office is there to work, you close your door, you get your work done. If you have a meeting, you use a conference room.
And my understanding is that today's space at Kent Way often has some just internal town employees to conduct their business day to day, need to, sometimes there's not an adequate space there right now of conference rooms. If there are multiple things going on, they are meeting in the upstairs hallway or other locations at Kent Way. That because of the lack of conference room space there.
Yeah. The other thing at Kent Way is it's office space trying to be used as a town hall. And what happens is town hall needs are a little bit different than just your traditional office space. How departments flow, where records are kept, proximity to building conservation, Board of Health, how they are aligned so that there's a decent flow where you're not leaving one floor to go to another to get something printed or to talk to someone. That would be, you know, key in your process of your daily work.
How big is the space we have at Kent Way?
It shows you down there. Now, again, this is the net square footage. Let me see if I can expand that.
Oh, I see it. It's 12,000.
That's
12,900.
that would be the gross square footage. Now, remember, we rent all the office space we pay for, but the common area hallways, the bathrooms, the stairwells are not figured in the net square footage. Certainly, that's the gross square footage. I think a good point to remember, every stairwell requires 200 square feet per floor. So, and every two-story building requires 2 stairwells. So there's 800 square feet right on stairwells, not even getting into hallways. An elevator is required by ADA to all levels that are going to be habitable or used by employees. And again, that's another 140 square feet per level. So on a 10,000 square foot building, just on stairwells and elevators, you've deducted approximately 1,200 square feet.
But let me repeat that question, because the total square footage, the 12,952, is that the Kent Way total square footage today?
Yeah, no, you have to look at the line above it.
Uh,
Okay, that's the total net square footage of Kent Way without a grossing factor. Okay.
Okay,
And
but if you gross the factor up in Kent Way, you're essentially the same size as what you're proposing for the new town hall.
yeah, let me do this, Marshall. I'm having trouble reading the fine print on that, so let me do this. If you go down to, let me, can you see my,
Yes,
where I'm pointing? Okay, it says subtotal net square footage. So the subtotal net square footage for Kent Way is 5,116 square feet.
correct.
For the proposed space, that for the first floor, the net square footage is 3,300, just under 3,400 square feet.
Correct.
And second floor, 3,400 square feet, and then the attic area. When you go to the bottom, there is no subtotal. It's confusing. The total square footage is for, it's not Kent Way at 12,900 square feet gross. It's the first, second, and attic. You add those 3 lines to the right, those 3 columns. We add
Correct.
these numbers, that becomes that. So if you took Kent
Oh,
Way,
okay. So
okay,
you're not
Kent-
putting
right.
directly down.
So Kent Way, at 5,100 square feet, call it 5,200 square feet, you would have to multiply that at 30%. You'd have to add 30% to that.
Okay.
Can you add some clarity to that? I assume you're going to be presenting this at your public sessions. I think that clarity is important, and perhaps a footnote identifying what gross versus net means might be make it a little bit more relevant to people understanding this.
Yeah, certainly.
Yep. And I would take that 12,962 or 52, whatever it is, and move it way over to your right so that it doesn't look like the foot of existing net square feet.
No, I apologize. This is an existing document prepared by Context.
Oh, okay.
So I'm not at liberty to altering it, but I can certainly reach out to them. This was something that was existing to be able to use as a tool today to help the finance committee
Right.
answer your question. So
Yeah,
Even
we
to
understand that, Bob.
Even to
Yeah.
annotate a slide, just to, if we're gonna do a screen share of, or, I mean, it's in a, use a grab, but then put off to the side that,
Yeah,
kind of like a
we could create,
clarification
we could
note.
create a, we could
Mhm.
create a slide showing the same thing, but it'd have to be our document, and we just can't alter
Right,
Sure.
right.
there,
Sure,
so.
no problem.
So for convenience and the shortness of time, I felt this would give us a concept of how the process works and how matters were broken down. Okay, now, I think it should be noted, this is showing, this is the formula that we wound up using to come in with the, basically your 10,000 square foot of habitable office space, meeting space, and then utilizing the attic area for mechanical, electronics, IT, and storage, which normally would have been spread through the first and second floor. And it would have been using prime Class A office space costs, for storage and HVAC and mechanical needs. Okay, anything else any other questions on this tab? Does this
No,
give you,
I think I'd want to play around with a slide that doesn't carry all of the detail, but in fact does carry the information, because it gets so busy that it's really difficult to in these 2 pages to get to where we need to be with the comparison of why are we so big, what are we now, what's the difference, and is this the appropriate size?
yeah, I think we could do that. Again, this is a work document that the committee uses so we can ascertain to do a comparison for apples. So I think to everyone's point, creating a slide that gives the totals with the footnote, as Susan suggested, on we're taking net square footage, needs to be at a grossing factor. And then certainly what is different between Kent Way space and what's being proposed in a new building.
Okay, good.
Okay.
Thank you, Bob.
Okay. Any other questions on this tab?
Go ahead,
Not a
Frank.
question, not a question per se, but so I think so I'm just going to play devil's advocate here, because I think devil's advocate is exactly what you're going to get at town meeting, right? And if I'm at town meeting and I'm sitting in the crowd, I'm going to say, okay, the old town hall was what, 4,700 square feet. Yeah, we had 2 trailers outside. Let's call them let's call the workspace 20 by 10. So it picks up another 400 square. That's 5,100. Yeah, we had some exterior storage, file storage. Let's call it another few hundred square. That gets us up 5,500, 6,000. I think it's my opinion that you need a succinct and visual way to show how. Because I'm going to say, well, we're talking 6,000 and we only got net plus 4 employees since we vacated in 2016. Why are we looking, this doesn't make sense to me. And I think that's where you can show that, okay, yeah, I get it, but we got 2 stairwells, they're 200 square feet a pop. We've got an elevator because we have to. That's X amount of square feet. That's this, that, and show a logical visual procession from whatever it is, 5,500 square feet, 6,000 square feet to 10,000 square feet. And I think that if that can't be easily visualized, people are going to say at 770 a square or wherever we are right now, I'm not sure with the 11.7 number, what that brings us up to per square. At 770 per square, I got to know why we couldn't do this in 6,000 square feet. And I think visualization will help that.
Yeah, I think
That's,
we have other slides in this packet, Frank, that can walk us through all of the steps that have been done in the past. So for clarification, the actual net square footage of town hall on the main level was about 2,900 square feet. As I recall, we have a site plan showing the trailers. We had 5 trailers in the back of the building, totaling about 1,800 to 2,000 square feet. And you had no storage at town hall. It was always remote. Most of the records were kept in, Susan, you would know better than most. As I recall, we had storage containers out by the town dump on that town property out there for years. And
Correct.
what we've learned is storing public records in unheated, unconditioned containers leads to potential moisture, mold, mildew. And at a meeting I was at the other night, of all the past records for Conservation Commission, I don't think we have any that are available prior to 2016, because improper storage with the best of intentions and mold, mildew, where that employees don't want to be subjected to it. So why don't I do this? Let's move on. This is, again, these are all existing.
Before we move on, I think Gene has his hand raised for their question.
Okay, certainly, Gene.
It was just, Bob actually answered the question that I had, because we need to speak to the inadequacies of the old town hall, and you just did, really.
Yeah.
So that answered my
Yes,
question.
yeah,
Bob.
we were out of space there, 4,700 square feet. Or excuse me, that's probably the wrong number now. It was 2,000 plus the trailers were inadequate, and adding to that, the building itself had air quality issues. We had issues with water and other issues in that building that predated. So it wasn't like we voluntarily moved out of an adequate space. We moved out because we were in inadequate space and did not have the option of adding trailers again. When the trailers were condemned, we were unable to add them back because they were no longer seen as temporary. We had pretty much pushed that to the limit of how long you could use temporary space in that location.
I would just caution that when we talk about trailers, not to take and confuse the trailers that will be used by the police to take and come back as a backlash. It's my understanding there was 2 trailers out front that were used by town hall, correct?
There were multiple trailers used over time. There were 2 used by town hall most recently, but there had been at time trailers out in the back that were used by, if I remember correctly, and we're going back now, they were used, we used to meet in one of them, but it was a multi-use, it was shared space between police and town
Yeah,
hall. There were
almost
conference
as a-
rooms.
Right, it's a conference room.
Yeah, there were multiple trailers and they were used for multiple purposes.
And most of them, the ones in the back were the police. I just don't want people to be misled and have that come back to bite somebody later on.
Well, I think we can add clarity to most of this, team. If I run through the next slides quickly, because it really maps out, I think it'll help answer all the questions. All right, so can I proceed? Okay, so obviously the municipal building committee made a recommendation at a joint meeting with finance, planning, capital, select board of a replacement structure at 25 High Road. These were the renderings. This is the map of the town showing where 25 High Road is and where Kentlet Way is. And I think just for reference, it gives you, I think it gives us a visual idea of the population center between Plum Island, Old Town, and let's say everything east of Route 1. It is substantial. And going to Kent Way, for me, it's a 21-minute ride from my house to go to Kent Way for pretty much anything. So I think there's a convenience factor too. But I thought it would be helpful to have at least a visual of we're on the other side of 95 to go to town hall. Okay, so these were the issues that we've been working on to address. Okay, and I'm not going to go read each one of these. I think these are really slides that we'll consider presenting at town meeting, but we're going to address the issue. These were the goals. A lot of this is empirical knowledge that I've gleaned from past reports, past meetings, past slide decks, to put it all in that more of a chronological order. So here we are with the history of how long we've been talking about town hall. Master plan identified 25 High Road back in 2006 is overcrowded and suggested options to explore and listed. This was taken from a slide deck prepared for a similar joint meeting back in 2014. Due diligence, the committee's due diligence, what have we been doing since September 22nd, 2022? And what we've done is this, we've looked at programming size, we've looked at site location, and so these were the options. These were previous options considered. Option A, B, C, D. Again, these were all ones that were considered by previous boards, and these were the locations. Here's a perfect example of what town hall looked like with the trailers out back. Now, I think what we should remember is this looks like two trailers connected in the middle. Those are actually 4 trailers with a trailer in the middle. Okay, and that's what existed prior to moving out of town hall. Okay, these were the previous options when we were talking about a town hall, a police station on existing town hall site, a new police station somewhere in town, the Governor's Academy site. This was the Boston Road down by the town forest that we've talked about. This is the Apple building site. I dug these out because these are all questions that were raised at previous meetings. So I thought, but these are slides that go back to 2014. Okay, again, this was a proposed, depending on what you were going to do, renovating a town hall with a new police station. This was one of the public safety complexes that was proposed back, and when we were thinking doing something like this, it should have a footnote, as I recall, doing this back then was going to have a total price tag of about $12 million. Hindsight being 2020, there is an economy of scale when you combine facilities. Okay, so it came down to 2 options that we were considering based on our charge. Option 1, new replacement. Option 2, raise, renovate, expand existing addition. You've heard this before at our previous meeting. I'm going to stop there. I don't think I need to get into boring you all with rereading the verbiage here. We have already seen it, but I'll stop and see if there's any questions, or you want me to proceed reading everything line by line. Gene, Gene has his hand up, or you just didn't take it down, Gene?
Oh, I didn't take it down.
Okay.
There, it's down.
Okay. So do the slides that I've just gone through help present the process over the last 9 years of what we've looked at, what previous committees have looked at, what we've all seen at a previous joint meeting back in 2014 in the library. A lot of this is refreshing us all what we've reviewed, how far we come, and why the conclusions we've reached. I think it's easy to assume that everyone understands all this, but you know what? Until you dig through it again, it's pretty easy to forget the ground covered.
Quick question, Bob, on the trailers that you had notated on the 25 High Road property, did you have one out front of Town Hall? Because there was also a trailer there that housed the Board of Health.
Yeah, you know what, again, I was just going by Susan, what we had for an
Okay.
existing record, so.
Okay,
Again, most of this is just an example or a reference to add a visual that we had trailers. Whether that was done because it was a site survey, which would be specific in size. I think in approximate locations, it gives the visual what we were dealing with. And I do remember the other trailer.
I remember that trailer, and that was added after the back trailers. We then moved into the front.
right,
Because there was even an issue getting the trailers that were condemned out of the back of the building at one point in time. That was a costly and logistically difficult. And Bob, I do want to thank you for going back. I was part of a lot of those meetings, and I tried to create a history because I was trying to see if like a logical timeline that we could lay out. There are so many places over the years. I do know that one of the dates that I was able to unearth was that the last public meet, the last Board of Selectmen meeting, which was the Board of Selectmen at the time and not the Select Board, was in July of 2016, was the last meeting of that board, July 16th, before we had to move out to Kentway. So that was, and on the docket that night were 3 options around public safety and buildings. So thank you for trying to consolidate what is a very long history.
Well, you know what it is, those of us that are in the construction trade have been involved in this process on and off for the last decade or so. What we remember, and I think we're trying to convey all the time, effort, studies that we've spent for the last dozen years, sorting through all of these options, all of these conditions, and anticipating current and future needs for the town. So if I may, I'll just go on to the next slide. And again, I'm not going to bore you with getting into much detail, other than if someone wants to just say, put a hold on a slide and we want to look at it further. All right, so again, this was your existing conditions. Renovating Old Town Hall at 25 Howard Road is more expensive than building a new town hall structure from scratch. Older buildings require significant upgrades to meet modern standards, current codes, which involve complex, costly work, updating electrical. You heard this all before. Nothing has changed. On tab 5, those of us that actually do this at the institutional level, the commercial level, the public level, this is automatic. But to the questions raised, those that are not in the business and not pricing and not producing and not billing this type of work, that know the pitfalls and the exposures. Tab 5 will add some more clarity to it. It backfills this statement that we're making with actual better. It gives you more information. It should be noted, the expertise of your building committee is extraordinary. Most building committees are made up of either town officials or elected officials, but not necessarily members of the community that are experts in this field. We're fortunate to have, John Keller, an OPM, does multi-million-dollar projects and multiple projects every day. He's seen, he's encouraged by what we're doing, but he's also easier to anticipate what we need to do, why we need to do it, and in a fashion so that it's timely, it's on budget, and it's on time when we get through with it. Eric Spahn, you heard me say this before, the town is so lucky to have the skill set of a man like Eric. Eric's projects are typically $500 million to $1 billion, where that you've got 17,000 individual tasks that have to be sequenced, scheduled, designed, and then ultimately built. All right. So you've seen this picture. This was the old Grange
Marshall, do you have
Hall.
a question?
I do, Bob.
Yep, excuse me, Marshall.
No problem. What I'd like to do and like you have share with this group is your observation of what a retrofit is like versus a new build in culinary terms. I think you likened it to the steak sandwich.
Oh, yeah. No,
Okay, because and really this is important stuff.
yeah. So when you have new construction, one, you have total control over elevations. You're not dealing with any existing conditions. You have specified material, specified design, and it's easy to quantify. There are misses. There no set of plans are 100% complete, and there'll be certain errors, and it's usually a variance of about 10%. Plan sets are usually 90% complete. When you get into renovation of structures that are 40, 50, or 60 years or older, and you have to anticipate putting on a addition that could many times be larger by scale of 2 to 1, it becomes what we call in the construction business a contractor's steak sandwich. Every wall we open up, we discover an unknown existing condition, and the project stops because we have to go back to the designer. Then they have to review it with the engineer, and then there has to be an SK done to tell us how to address whether it's a structural or mechanical, or if it's some other type of deficiency. And that is a 3-week project. And in the public bid process, you don't get to go out and get 2 prices on a change order. You get a budget number, you do the best you can to get it down, but while you're discussing it, you're incurring excusable delay. And I'll get back and you'll see that on tab 5. It will add a little more clarity to the pitfalls of doing renovations on an older building while trying to incorporate an addition. It should be noted, renovations is a process if the building you have is of sufficient size and its existing conditions, its MEP, and all of the HVAC is outdated, then you'll hear the term doing repairs or extraordinary repairs, changing the roof, changing the windows, changing the siding, and reconfiguring. But you're not going to be adding on to an existing building. Older schools that become abandoned are perfect opportunities, excuse me, to be retrofitted, renovated, and reused, because they usually exceed the proposed size of what you're doing. So let's just move on here. You've got your pictures here. The original Grange Hall, rather large 2-story building on the corner of Morgan and High Road. Certainly the history is spotty, as I mentioned in the past. This was sold to the town. This smaller 1-story structure was sold to the town in 1937, and it became the town hall across from the Upper Green. 1977, there's an addition that was added to the left of the original, the replacement structure. And the best we can guess is this is when the police department moved into the basement. I think the thing we have to keep on the forefront is in Newbury was a part-time, we had a part-time staff, part-time town hall. Our police department, although full-time, I remember talking to Mike Bulgaris, the phone, if there was a call to the police, it rang at his house, and then he would answer the call. As state mandates and requirements change, we are required to convert from a part-time staff, part-time town hall to a more full-time operation. And one person couldn't wear three hats. They had to be separated. I mentioned Jim Cashman was a perfect example, but that's how the town grows over a period of time from a municipal office standpoint. These were the trailers out back. And again, these were just some visuals that I thought may be helpful to remind us what we used to deal with. Okay, so back in 2000, was this 2018? The town had looked at doing an addition off the back, renovating town hall, doing an addition off the back. And so this gave you, this is a perfect visual of the traffic confusion you have on the corner of Morgan Ave and High Road. You get upwards of 12 cars backing out into live traffic. And we all remember that's where the police used to park mostly. But when the police weren't there, if we had a town meeting or we had a town meeting for hearing for any one of the committees, we'd park there. But you wound up having 3 curb cuts and 12 parking spaces. Not the right traffic flow on a corner that is fairly busy. So these were the existing conditions of High Road, which ultimately led to, one, the space restrictions, and two, the concerns on health. Was an air quality report performed by the Commonwealth of Mass, which continues to be an issue. There was a leaking roof during mild storms, rodent activity, proper fire separation between the floors. One of the things that always horrified me about Town Hall at 25 High Road is you had a operational police department with live ammunition and guns downstairs, and we had a drop ceiling and a plywood floor separating the levels, where that a misfire, errant discharge, or some sort of struggle. I just had these horrific visions of a gunshot bullet penetrating the floor and whizzing by someone that works for the town. It was not a good thing. The building lacked sprinkler. We had no proper document storage. We had overcrowding of all the offices, led to the trailer purchases. In the basement area where the police were occupied, it never was really, it was never habitable space. For the life of me, I don't know how that was even allowed to exist, because the floor to ceiling height in the basement level, the gross height is 7'4". That's from concrete floor to the bottom of the floor joist above. And the minimum is 7'6", and that's after you have all of your mechanicals, lighting, ceiling placed in it. So these were some of the conditions that led up to why we moved out of Town Hall. Solution, again, you know what? We've been talking about critical needs, Town Hall needs, for upwards of a dozen years. 25 High Road, by default, had all of the utilities, all of the betterments needed, with a lot of the current testing completed and already paid for. And again, it's in the historic district. And you know, one of the things when you dig into this, isn't it part of our job as volunteers of the town that serve our town to preserve and enhance the historic district of our town? The forefathers thought it was important. Both the federal government and the state memorialized that. And I think that we have a responsibility to continue to follow and preserve this historic district. Now, these other parts here are, we've got approximately $4.5 million set aside, $4 million from free cash, and just under 500,000 from monies that we were able to save by bringing in the police station project under budget. And again, we're talking, I mean, again, this is kind of the preview for our ATM presentation. This is certainly still a draft. If we add another $1 million, which will be, I think that's Article 17, Erica, is the,
Yes, and I'd like to just double check that the number that, and Tracy had to drop, but we will confirm all of these so that the numbers are consistent. The
right,
number after the transfer in that account would be just over $5 million, $5,089, $5,800, oh my God, $5,089,608 in that town hall account. If Article 17 passes, adding $1 million. So that's
Okay.
where that would be.
the $441,000 that Tracy references as leftover funds from the police station
I think
project.
it's already been in there, but I'm not positive. So we'll double
Yeah.
check all of that.
Okay,
But I think what would be really helpful is seeing the side by side of Reno to
okay,
Reno to build new to really see this drive at home. Cause I think that that's I think understanding those numbers will go a long way with this group as we are tasked with numbers.
you have seen all of this before. So these were the town hall project, town hall cost components, where we made an adjustment to the direct building costs, and we broke out the building removal. And that was at the advice of our architect. And that's the change that we had from the 10,000,008 to the 11,000,005. Because every change or increase impacts the escalation amount and the contingency amount. So let me get out of that. These were previous reports, just the cover sheets. This was the air quality done by the Commonwealth, which ultimately led to us in October 2015. It became clear that we had a sick building. Employees were complaining about certain respiratory ailments. And Susan, you probably remember all of this vividly, being stuck in an office with Sam and Doug for probably longer than you would like. So tab 5, and I think this was I reached out to Context and I said, we need to quantify the statements that are being made that we all agree on from the committee and from the architect on why renovation with an addition will be at a minimum the same cost, but likely more than new construction. So Jeff Shaw was able to prepare this for me to be added for your review. Okay, and I think let me just go back to, I think the biggest part is on page 2. It gives you all of the issues that you run into and how the scope changes on the process of design, but ultimately where the weaknesses in the exposures to cost is. So I think what you'll see here is on the last page, they were 4 bullet points. 1, cost per square foot will equal or exceed new construction. 2, the owner's contingency renovation and addition should be carried at 25% of construction costs, not 7 to 10%, which is routine for new construction. 3, total excusable delay for contractor should be anticipated at 5 to 7 months, sorting through unknown existing conditions. 4, excusable delay costs $140,000 per month to account for the contractor's general conditions and the cost of the owner, project manager, and designer time beyond their contract. So what I did is I took the town hall cost components. On the column C, you'll see that is the updated one at a 11,574,000. And what I did is I added a column based on this guidance from Context, renovation and addition. So if we go down that, the square footage costs are different. Square footage sizes are different. And if you go to the subtotal, it is $8,100,000 doing a renovation versus new construction at $8.6 million. Now, as we go down the soft cost, professional services, the soft cost professional services would actually increase according to Jeff Shaw's letter, but for comparison's sake, I left that alone. As you get down to the bottom, I highlighted in blue, we carried a project contingency of 7% for new construction, which once we go to public bid, we would reduce that to 5%. Following the guidance is we added project contingency for renovation addition at 25%. And then we added a reserve line item to cover the excusable delay. Every time you come up with a new twist or of an unknown condition, as I said earlier, it takes upwards of 3 weeks to resolve, to go through the design, engineering, approval, and then change order to fund it. And so apples for apples, 11,500,000 thereabouts for new construction. Worst case scenario on renovation is 13,600,000. So now here, the next page is, again, this isn't apples for apples, but what we all use, architects, contractors, those are doing bid work. There are reference books that give us past information. So I took this out of one of the books, and again, I apologize that this was put together in a couple of days, but what this does is it gives you an idea how some projects, and again, you can't really compare apples for apples because you don't know exactly the projects. But when you see an addition renovation coming in at 407 and you see new work coming in at 261, very rarely do you see the numbers cross where that addition renovation comes in cheaper, unless it's a minor one in nature. But these were some of the references that I was able to pull together on relatively short notice to assist the finance committee on the questions that were presented that you were asking for clarity on. So I'm going to stop there, and Erica, whatever questions your team may have, or
Sure. So my quick calculations looking back, if you could just move it back up, because I think this is where we might have some questions, is yes, exactly. The difference between the 13.6 number for renovation plus addition and the 11.6 is actually comes out to $2,062,093 difference. So, and this is being as close to an apples to apples renovation addition versus new construction. It looks like it's about $2 million here. I would also, just in my own mind on the finance committee, know that every month that we stay in a rented space, we're adding cost. And this looks like we would be looking at anywhere from 5 to 7 months is what we would be anticipating would take longer than if we were moving into a new building there as well. So I just wanted, those were my summary thoughts, but I open it up to other members of the committee for questions and comments.
Marshall?
One of the things that you had mentioned, and we had seen it in our building as well, is that there is a fixed cost or overhead cost that is not going to change with the per square foot price, and there is a per square foot sort of materials and construction price. And I think being able to separate those out and saying, well, if we cut the size, if we were to cut the size, we are not saving that kind of money because the overhead costs do not change. And you mentioned the OPM cost, the owner's project manager cost, with a huge project could be $4 a foot, whereas a smaller projects could be $400 a foot or $40 a foot, whatever the case. It's a factor of 10 difference to a factor of 100, depending on the size of the project. And I think that's another factor to throw out there is, and I think you have it do you have it in the soft costs? Yes, you do.
Yeah, I think to Marshall's point, and we've had some discussions on this, there is a fixed overhead to mobilize on a project. So the general contractor has to have a staffing level superintendent, his own project manager, a staff of 5 that is going to be there, and that's a fixed cost, whether that building is 10,000 square feet or 100,000 square feet. And the example I used to Marshall previously was on the OPM. That's a block of time that you buy, and it's not a percentage of cost. So on a 10,000 square foot building, our cost per square foot for an OPM is $40 per square foot. If it was a 100,000 square foot building, the cost would be $4 per square foot. So once you get below 20,000 square feet, and actually 30,000 square feet, trying to use a cost per square foot comparison, it's kind of all you can do, but it is, if we drop this from 10,000 to 9,000 square feet, just as a matter of math, you're not going to drop the VAT, you're not going to drop your cost by 10%. It would probably drop the cost by the materials alone, because the mobilization of all of your filed subbidders, it's a block of time plus materials plus profit and overhead. And I think the big point is, one of the reasons we were able to bring the, go ahead. Was
No, we're
did
good.
someone? Oh, okay. One of the reasons we were ever to bring the police station in under budget was a simple fact of bringing it in on time, and not getting caught up on. Typically, you have a $3,500 change order. It gets discussed for 3 weeks. It would go to the municipal building committee, and then it would go up to the select board to amend the contract and come back down. Now you've used 30 days of time. That becomes excusable delay for a $3,500 process. The expense is that $140,000. Every day of excusable delay beyond the contract is reimbursable, that we previously had said. The select board actually streamlined that on the police station project, and we had no excusable delay. And that was a key factor in us being able to bring that in under budget. But so building it smaller doesn't necessarily ensure anything that you will outgrow the building before it's during its useful lifespan. Not that you're going to reduce the actual cost.
I'd like to bring one other point up, and that is that in the documents, people talk about 30 years when in fact we're talking about a building that, if we look at other municipal buildings, 50, 60, 70 years is not an uncommon amount of time that a building would be occupying. And then one of the, that's one. Number two, people had talked about buildings that had been renovated. And one of the ones was the Georgetown Town Hall, but that was considerably larger to start with. And I think that started as a school in Georgetown and then was converted to the town hall. And it had a very much larger space than was necessary, and it now houses the town offices and the police department.
Yeah, I think the same is true for West Newbury's Town Hall, was an old school that didn't require an addition for the town hall services, but they then did a combined facility with the police, as I recall. Erica, I see
And it
Frank's
looks like
hand.
Frank's hands is up, so go with him.
Yeah, thanks. So again, first of all, let me say, everything that's been said here, I take as gospel. Fine. I agree with all of it. I don't dispute any of it. All of this makes 100% sense to me. I'm more concerned with the optics. So, Bob, if you would, I'm some random person at town meeting. I stand up and I say, tell me, in your professional opinion, that we cannot have a functional town hall in 6,000, 6,500, 7,000 square feet, and why? How would you address that question?
I
Thank
would
you.
simply say that, one, we need 7,000 square feet of net square footage to have a functional town hall. If you have 7,000 square feet of gross square footage, you do not have the net square footage to have a functional town hall. That's what people get lost on, Frank, is the grossing factor, and it's just the reality of it all. And anything else, Frank?
So if I could, knowing that.
No, that's it. Thank you. Sorry, I was muted. Sorry,
That's
Susan.
okay. That's okay. I would just say, having said that, I think we need to be very, very clear with regard to that information and the square footage differences and the cost differences because of that.
Yeah, and I think to Marshall and Erica's point on that programming comparison between what we have at Kent Way and what's being proposed, I think if we focus on the gross versus net, it may add clarity to that, and also address the question that Frank just raised as well.
Jean, Tom, Susan, anyone have questions? Frank as well, but I know you just asked one, but there's other questions that are raised that Bob and Dana and others who have been involved in this could answer at this time.
None from me.
Yeah, Erica.
Tom looks like he's talking, but we're not hearing him. He needs to unmute. Go ahead, Tom, you're unmuted, or you were. Hold on.
Bob, on the 4 bullet points that you mentioned, the first one being cost per square foot will equal or exceed,
Yes.
wouldn't it make, or would it be more correct to say the fact that the cost per square foot will be greater for renovation versus new construction? There's no question about it would be equal.
It's typically how it's phrased, Tom. I mean, we can.
Well,
I-
my fear being, I agree with you, that's, but my fear is being that there's going to be a belief by some that you could actually renovate this building for the same amount of money and provide what the new construction is going to give you when I believe is not possible.
Yeah, I mean, I think that if we did a renovation, again, what I tried to do, Tom, obviously, is adapt some existing spreadsheet that had all of our probable cost breakdown. If I was to do it really accurately and extensively, I would have to go back to context and say, what would be your amended cost to convert this from a new construction to renovation, new addition? And that would also increase that number. Our schedule, let me just see where our schedule is here. We would update our project schedule to include that 5 to 7 months. We wouldn't be going out to bid in November because we would have to do a reset and reconfigure. And two, rather than having a 13-month project, we would convert this into an 18-month project. So now excusable delay would happen if we stuck with this project, but we'd have to amend contracts and amend the bid docs that this is now an 18-month project. And it would be reflected in the prices of your bids. But let me just see. Yeah, you know what it is? What I guess the factor we have to make clear is we have programming needs that have to be met. And if we're not, then we should save our money and not do anything. If we're not going to build the building to meet the programming needs that we project, with the efficiencies and the innovation that we've suggested, then we shouldn't just build the building to build it that's really going to be obsolete before it's open. And I was hoping that comparing what typically you would have had, you're not going to see a town hall project. Our police station was 10,000 square feet. Salisbury's police station, I think, was 19,000 square feet. Now, our populations are not that different, but our town is a little more frugal. And I think that, I think the municipal building committee and the design team can take some credit that we took a more innovative approach. We didn't just go with, yeah, all these are these old standards. That we incorporated what we see in our day-to-day businesses. But I tell you what I'd like to do if there's no other questions. You are now part of a focus group on our potential slide deck for town meeting. And I've included a lot of stuff here that is it all necessary? So again, we're going to be scheduling a meeting of the Municipal Building Committee this week. And this is in draft form, and certainly it will be, it'll be reviewed, modified, or approved as it is. So, but this is what we were thinking of doing, giving us all a reference of where town hall could be, where it is, addressing the issues as we see it, just referencing we're paying current rent of 200 grand a year. I quickly calculate we probably already paid $1.3 million in rent.
We have paid to date exactly $1,287,173 to date as of April 4th. Is the total for lease payments, utility payments, and moving costs and retrofitting that space at Kent Way. So every year that we add on to this, it's at the tune of, it's increasing every year, but it's at least up to 185 right now per year in that space.
Okay. So
data visualization is my jam. That is
Yeah.
what I do. I try to do that. I think we can probably shorten, you've got all the bones of what we need here, but I think we could probably streamline it down a little bit more. A lot of this stuff could really end up almost in an appendix or a reference as needed. But I think we really need to kind of hit the high notes of why is this building needed? Why is the size that we've done correct? The schematics, like the why is this building needed? Why is this the right size? Why is building new versus renovating an addition the better option and the one that was recommended by your committee? And then I think the part that is upon a little bit upon finance committee is to then talk about the cost of the bonding and to like what that means to taxpayers. I feel like that almost falls to our purview, but that to get behind this, like I can tell you right now, I understand from the years of experience on this is that 25 High Road location is the right place because we have exhausted so many other places. The other part being that we are now at the position of needing a standalone town hall because we did not earlier move on any combined complexes. There are no combined complexes to be had. So a standalone, I'm convinced. 25 High Road, I'm convinced. Seeing the numbers here makes me even more, because I do trust the incredible wisdom of your group and the members of that group that to give us the accurate numbers. That spending $2 million and extending a project to a longer timeline does not seem to be financially in our best interest on either of those two things, based on the fact of higher dollar cost to renovate, and number two, the timeline that then extends all of our costs. So in my mind, I'm behind this, and I think we can work on how that gets laid out a little bit more. But I do not want to speak on behalf of any members of this committee. That everyone here has their own perspective and can vote their way on whether or not this is a project and whether we would approve this article or whether or not we would recommend this warrant article.
So are you moving for a vote to, for the Finance Committee to weigh in on Article 18, which we left out of our last meeting?
We left out of our last meeting. I just want to make sure no one has further questions before we move that.
Well, we can move it, second it, and then bring it up to
Perfect.
discussion. So I would move that we vote on Article 18.
Second,
Okay. Discussion.
Gene has his hand raised. Let's go to Gene first.
The question I have is, clearly, I think what's been presented is excellent. The question I have is, what are the finances going to look like, and how are we going to present those finances to the town? I haven't seen anything. I wasn't at the last meeting, so maybe somebody has that information. What's the impact going to be?
Okay, there are two things. So let me launch into that because I've done quite a bit of work on this. And what happens overall is that one of the questions was, is it cheaper to rent? Ownership is out of the question now. We've gotten that put away. Or are we better off bonding? I did some, in fact, it was in the article in the paper, but the cost is cheaper overall to build the building than to continue to rent at Kent Way for a much smaller space. One, and then we calculated and again, it depends on what the exact figure comes into, but it's about $100 to $110 per average household per year in bonding. However, you have to remember that the bonding does not last as long as the rental would have lasted. One, and two, should interest rates go down, we can refinance and lower that burden to the townspeople. And we'll have that all done. Gene? You're on mute. Gene, you're on mute.
Lower right or lower left. Still on mute, Gene.
Gene,
I'm back, I think.
Yes,
Am I
you
back?
are.
Okay, I lost my screen. I had it on the question. I mean, the paper today, I mean, Selectman Walker quoted 120 on the he quoted a number on the average house today. And I thought, I can't remember exactly what it was.
But we're in the same range, 110,
Yeah, okay.
100 to 120.
Yeah,
Okay.
okay, all right. And that's a 20, we talking a 20-year bond?
We're talking about a 30-year bond.
30-year? Okay, all
Yeah.
right, okay, all right.
And if we can, again, a couple of things that weigh into this. One, if we get the $1 million voted at the annual town meeting in Article 17, then that reduces that number as well. And I'll have both numbers ready to go.
At the same time, our debt is going down as well before, even now, right?
Yes,
Each year, yeah. But we also have to anticipate questions around the impacts, potential impacts of school buildings, school renovations that should be coming down the pike.
that's one of the things that can be a red herring, because we have no idea how much of money is going to be available from the state or federal government, other towns.
Right.
And when that's going to happen.
Yeah, Triton, the earliest we'd even know if we're accepted or not accepted into the next round is December of 2023. And if we were to be accepted, then there's an 18-month feasibility. So we're still probably 2 years from, even for Triton at best case scenario, having any sort of hard number. And this isn't something that I think we should delay on this completely.
No, because if we delay on this, we're going to have them both coming together at the same time.
Right.
Yeah. Frank, your questions or comments?
No, that was it. I just think, yes, I understand Gene's point, but that is the third rail of what you want to touch in terms of this presentation, because it is an ill-defined, not at all defined boogeyman that, yeah, it's coming, but it can't be part of this decision. And to Gene's point, I mean, that's a lot of the scuttlebutt going around is like, well, we're not a town that passes multiple overrides, so I'm pro-school. I don't want to go begging when it comes time for a school override because we've passed too big an override here. That to me is one of the biggest considerations, but I don't think you can touch it because there is no definition around what schools are going to cost us in the short to intermediate term of, call it 3 to 5 years. Yeah. It's not good.
But it is out there. It is out there.
It is out there. It is what it is. I just don't, it's not, if the variable had definition, you could plug it into the equation, but it has nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing other than a big scary number we got from a consulting company that's in the business of providing big scary numbers. So.
Okay. Other comments, questions? We call for a vote. And this has to be a roll call vote. So give me a second to set up the roll.
Thank you, Marshall, for doing that. I'd like to take this moment to thank Marshall for being our minutes scribe, thereby saving us. We do not use any taxpayer dollars to do our minutes. Marshall, like all of us, are volunteers.
Okay, so this is going to be a roll call vote. And when your name is called, if you could say yay, nay, or abstain, we'll put that together. So Erica?
Yay, I recommend, vote to recommend.
I'm voting to recommend. Gene?
Yes.
Okay. Frank?
Yay.
Tom?
Yes.
Susan?
Yes.
Okay. So 6 yeses, so we've got it done.
So on this one, we are a 6
6
in
0.
favor, 600. This is changed because on Tuesday night, Jean was not there for the votes on the other warrants. Those all of those went 500, which by the time, I think it's also very prudent to say, by the time we get to our votes to recommend or not recommend, we've had many discussions about these. We've seen them go through capital planning. We've been in the course of other conversations going on that this isn't the first time we're seeing any of these articles. They have gone through, we've been parts of discussions, and I really want to thank Bob. And Bob, I'd like you to pass this along to other members of your committee and to Jeff Shaw and everyone who went into helping provide additional information to set the finance committee up to be able to feel comfortable with a vote.
I
today.
second that.
Well, thank you, everyone. And listen, you know what? We're all volunteers. And the town of Newbury is so fortunate to have a segment of its population that will, what we all do in our free time for free is amazing at times. But thank you all too for all the efforts and time you put into helping our little town survive.
Okay. So we've got some next tasks to consider. And those have to do with editing the deck or making comments on the deck for the annual town. Well, actually, I think Susan is right in talking about these decks need to be ready for our presentations on the 15th and the 22nd before the annual town meeting. And so to that end, we are now on the 7th. We need to have this stuff ready to go next week. Do you want to have a smaller group of people to work on this, or how do you want to work this, Erica?
I would love to have some assistance in writing our presentation. I submitted a draft around to this group that had everything but Article 17 and 18 kind of fleshed out. The rest of that is pretty well a script that we've used over the last couple of years. I would love to have some, if people want to submit some ideas in writing and we set up a working session. The only thing is I want to make sure that if we have anything that has more than 3 of us, we need to have an open meeting to discuss that presentation. So I just want to make sure we have the 48 hours to discuss that. Or we could set up a smaller working group to look at it.
Okay. Whatever your choice. I mean, 3 people should.
I have an 11:40 stop. I'm sorry, I have to drop out. Just tell me, shoot me an email or tell me what's needed, or somebody call me.
Perfect.
I'm happy to
Okay.
help on whatever. Okay. Okay.
Great.
Thank you
Thank
all
you.
for your time.
Frank.
Okay. Bye.
So do you want to set up a working group?
Yes. Anyone want to volunteer to sit on the working group?
I
I will
have,
be on.
I am not going to be available much for the next week or two, so.
Thank you, Jean.
Sure.
That's fine.
I've been working the figures, so I think I should be on that.
Okay, great.
And then we need 1 more person.
I'm away starting next week for a week, so I'm not sure that could be a great help.
Okay. We can check with Frank if he's willing to be an edit, but I think we can set up the working group, Marshall, of you and me. Susan, if you want to be a part of it too, or if.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't want to box you out or anyway, but.
No, I was just kind of waiting because I'm kind of the newbie on the crew, so I didn't want to stomp on anybody's toes, but I'm happy to participate and provide any value I can give you.
And why don't we just run this stuff by you, Susan,
Okay,
as we make it and
Okay.
look for your comments. How about that?
sure, that's
Yeah,
fine.
as we tell it also, I often do this is where we pressure test it with somebody who isn't involved. So if Marshall and I can then run it by others to just like on an individual basis. Just to kind
Sure.
of say, where would you poke holes in this? I think that would be really helpful. I think we should also all be prepared for annual town meeting to be, the meeting starts at 7 at Newbury Elementary. I am going to post a meeting for us at 6:30, just to give us a chance to meet in an open, we will be meeting like kind of in the front of that room in the gym, but that allows us to post the open meeting, allows us to converse amongst one another and have any discussions related to who might speak to an article that evening. Tracy will get some information in terms of who's making motions, and we can also decide amongst ourselves. I think in the past, like Marshall has spoken, Marshall and Tom would probably be called upon to speak to articles that have come in front of capital planning. I sometimes speak to, just because I do a presentation on the operating budget, I often speak to the items in the operating budget, but we can then just decide that night if we have any last minute changes.
Good. And then I think individually, we can just take a look at the
Yeah.
deck that the municipal building committee has put together and send them our thoughts.
Also, I do want to make sure that people, I don't know if everybody saw this in the newspaper yesterday, but the editor of the Daily News and a reporter will be sitting down with some members of the select board. And I've been asked to attend as well. And that's actually at 1 o'clock today. So I need to see if my work schedule still allows me to attend that meeting. The fact that we have a 6 to unanimous group here today in behind Article 18, I think is significant. And I'd like to be able to share that, as this is a public meeting. People could have joined it today to see this. So I think that it will go on record, and Jeff was a part of this meeting too. So I expect that information to be shared.
Okay.
Good point.
Anything else you'd like to cover today?
I don't think so. Anyone else have any other items? I genuinely thank all of you for taking 2 hours of time, or an hour and 45 minutes of time on a Friday morning to have these very important conversations.
Pleasure. I'd entertain a motion to.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
All right.
Aye. Roll call vote. Marshall, yes.
Yes.
Adjourn.
Okay.
Susan, yes,
Actually,
adjourn.
let me do the roll
Yes.
call.
Okay,
Thank you
perfect.
very much. So for adjourn, Erica.
Yes.
Okay, I'm a yes. Jean is a yes. I heard it. Frank is no longer here with us. Tom,
Yes.
we're finished up. And Susan, finally.
Yes.
Okay, we're done. Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
you
Erica.
all.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.